Hey, I'm Scott. In this video, I'm going to go over the 3 modifications I made to the spinner control in my Arcade1UP cabinet. This video is part of a series of videos I have about the Arcade1UP cabinets. The spinner control is available in 3 of the Arcade1UP cabinets: the Asteroids cabinet, the Rare Asteroids Deluxe cabinet, and the 12-in-1 cabinet. In this video, I'll discuss the difference between a dial control and a spinner control. Now, most of these games released on the Arcade1UP cabinets use the spinner control. However, Arcade1UP cabinets came with a dial control. I'll demonstrate the 3 modifications that you can make to your spinner control to enhance the gameplay on your Arcade1UP cabinet. I'll address a couple of alternatives of replacing your plastic dial spinner on the Arcade1UP cabinet with real metal spinner controls that have ball bearings and flywheels. In the bonus section of this video, I include a list of games that you could play that are based on the spinner control. That's really important because now that Arcade1UP has a spinner control in their arsenal on the control panel, they can release future cabinets that include all these games. So check out that list and see if it includes one of the games that you really enjoy playing, like Tron.
As of January 2019, out of all the cabinets that Arcade1UP have released, only 3 of the cabinets contain games with spinner controls. Those are Asteroids, Asteroids Deluxe, and the 12-in-1. To make things even simpler, there are actually only 2 games that have been released on Arcade1UP cabinets that use a spinner control, and that is Major Havoc and Tempest. However, within Major Havoc, there's a mini game. It's called Mini Breakout. It's in the bottom right-hand corner of this screen, and that uses a spinner control. And finally, if you do the PCB hack where you add the female USB connector, you can have access to the main menu where you'll see extra games that are included, such as Breakout and Super Breakout, and these actually use the spinner control too. In this section of the video, I'm going to describe the difference between a spinner control and a dial control. In this picture, you'll see a control. These are called the paddle controls. So let me ask you, do you consider these a dial control or a spinner control? Let's take a closer look at some of the attributes of a dial control and some examples that you see in everyday life. These pictures are just a sampling of some of the dials that you use in your everyday life. They're prevalent. They're everywhere. You just don't think about it. They're sitting in your subconscious. But yes, we depend on the dial and its clicks and its finite number of selections in almost everything we do in our lives. Let's talk about the spinner control and its attributes and its analog behavior. There's a large selection. You'll hear no clicks when you rotate a spinner control. It's usually based on ball bearings and a smooth operation. In games, you'll have a sensitivity configuration table. These pictures show the Tempest control and how it's mounted on the control panel. And then you'll see what the device looks like removed from the control panel, how it is in one piece. And it looks a little bit more complicated than the Arcade1UP dial control. Some of the similarities between the spinner control and the Arcade1UP dial control is there's the bracket and the PCB that they use, and they attach the control panel. And then you'll see the knob, the rotary knob that's available above the control panel. But let's talk about the difference. The big white elephant that's on the table, that big circle disc. Look at all those different slots in it. That's where a light will go through, and each time that slot goes by that light, it indicates that a movement has been made. Look at all those different options. There's a lot more than the 24 clicks that you'll get in that Arcade1UP dial. This picture shows you what a brand new Ultimark spin track spinner control would look like, and the different kind of knobs, control knobs you have available to you in the color that you could actually put into a video arcade cabinet. Okay, now that we've discussed the similarities and the differences between the dial control and the spinner control, let's go back to our original question. These paddle controls, are they considered a dial control or a spinner control? Well, that's kind of a trick question. If you go to the main configuration settings, to configure your paddle or your dial or your spinner control, it's all related to the paddle configuration options. In this section of the video, I want to demonstrate to you that the spinner control in the Arcade1UP cabinet, which is really a dial, has a finite number of 24 clicks per 360 degree revolution. Now to do this, I added a white dot of paint on top of my spinner control so you can see when I make the complete 360-degree revolution. And then in the video you'll hear me do a countdown. Each time I do a click, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, and I get all the way to the number 24 when I hit to the back to 360-degree revolution.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24.
So, do you really need to make these spinner mods? Well, if you're a beginner level player, you probably don't. You probably wouldn't notice the difference. If you're an intermediate level player, then you should probably make these changes. Your gameplay will improve a little bit. But remember, it doesn't fix all the issues. It just makes the dial control play more like a spinner control, but it's still a dial control. These game designers of these classic arcade games, they wanted special controls to be played with their games, and they did that. They created control panels that were unique to their games. So if a classic arcade game was meant to be played with a dial control, then the original control panel would have contained a dial control instead of a spinner control. Okay, after 6.5 minutes of going through this video, we're finally here. We're finally at the point where we're now going to do the mods to the spinner. First step we have to take is to remove the control panel. This is held in place by 4 screws. We remove those 4 screws, lift it up, and then there'll be a connector, and we'll remove the connector from the bottom of the control panel. Next up is to remove the plastic cover under the control panel that protects all the wiring. There's 6 screws that hold this in place. It's pretty easy to remove. The next step is to remove the spinner control from the control panel. First thing we have to do is to remove the spinner control bracket. There's 2 screws that hold it in place to the underside of the control panel. We remove those. There you can see the shaft and the PCB that actually sends the signals to the computer. The next part is to remove the actual spinner knob. There's 2 screws that hold it together. We remove those 2 screws and the bottom plate will remove from the spinner cavity. At this point you can see how the base plate of the spinner knob interfaces with the shaft of the spinner control. It has that semicircle with the flat piece, and those should be fitted precisely together, and they're not. That creates the slack in this thing. You also see the cavity of the spinner knob. This is what we're going to put the pennies into to give it a more dense feel. Okay, we have the spinner broken down, so now we're going to begin performing the mods. The first mod we're going to do is to remove the slack between the base plate of the spinner knob and the shaft on the spinner control. This video is demonstrating how when I move the spinner base left and right, it's not making the spinner shaft turn. There's play in here, so we got to remove that play. And the way you remove the play is you can wrap a piece of electrical tape around the spinner shaft and then put the spinner plate back on it. Now the tip here is you don't need much of the electrical tape. Okay, I actually have too long a piece here. The first time I did it, I had to go back. You only need enough electrical tape to go around the spinner shaft one time. Just one time. And make sure your electrical tape is not too wide. You only want it to be as wide as a black piece on the spinner shaft. Here the video shows after I put it all back together. Now I can rotate the base plate left and right, and it makes everything turn. It's all tight. Now we're going to do the second mod. We're going to add weight to the spinner control. Now everybody talks about how it's light and we want it to be more dense. And that's hard to demonstrate on a video. So I got my little scale out. I want to show you. The spinner cavity, the knob by itself, weighs 4/10 of an ounce. So if you take these penny stacks, and I've got 4 stacks of 10 pennies each for 40 cents, I add them together and I put that with the spinner control knob, it comes out to 3.8 ounces. So that's quite a bit of weight. Now we move on to the video clip that shows me inserting the 4 stacks of penny rolls into the cavity of my spinner knob. Now each stack of pennies, there's 10 pennies in a stack. I just put some electrical tape around them, and I put 1 stack on each side of the divider on the bottom. That's the bottom row. And then I come back and I put another stack on top of each of those. And it's amazing how it works out. Now I didn't come up with this idea. Somebody on YouTube or one of the Facebook groups, they figured out that 2 stacks of pennies fits perfectly in the cavity, the circumference of the spinner control knob. It's pretty amazing how things like that work out, and it does give it dense. It makes it heavier and it feels different in your hands. It's pretty nice. So pretty simple mod, costs you 40 cents and some electrical tape. Okay, now we're going to do the third mod where we add spacers to the screw thread holes on the bottom of the spinner control knob. And this is to create the spacing between the base plate and the top knob, because when they're screwed together they compress against the control panel and it makes it rub. Now I tried the suggested method of using the number 6 lock washers, but that wasn't good for me. That created too much space. So then I tried just regular flat washers, and that too had too much space. So I tried a third option that some gamer on the internet suggested, where you just put a piece of black electrical tape over those screw threads, slice it so the screw thread will go in it, and that'll give you just enough spacing to make the clearance between the top and the bottom of the control panel. And he was right. That worked for me.
In this clip, I'm just going to show you how tight the spinner control knob is. I'm going to try and rotate it really fast, and you'll see that it won't even move. And that's because it's rubbing on the control panel. So we'll try and fix that.
Alright, we're done making the 3 mods. Now we got to put it all back together. I put the plastic covering back on the bottom of my control panel. I put the wiring harness connector back onto the bottom of the control panel. I slipped the control panel back into the cavity on my Arcade1UP cabinet. And then I just attached the 4 screws. And then at that point, it's all back together. That's how easy it is to take it apart and how easy it is to put it back together.
Okay, I got it all put back together. I made the 3 modifications to the spinner. I added the pennies to make it heavier. Added the washer, the number 6 lock washer. Actually didn't add that. I couldn't get that to work right. So I added another suggestion somebody had, where I had black electrical tape, and that was just enough clearance. So it's not rubbing on my control panel anymore. And so the pennies gave me the weight I was looking for. And then the electrical tape on the rod, that definitely fixed the slack. So the tape on the rod, I would give that 100%. That took away the slack. The pennies, as far as weight, it is more dense. So I give that 100%. But I did get it where it's not rubbing on my control panel anymore. But it still doesn't spin. So it's still a dial. It's not a spinner where you could just, if you had a spinner, I'd go like that and it would go. It's not that. So, but overall, it worked. It took me over an hour to do it. So was it worth it? You know, yeah, I can tell it's worth it. So we'll select it. We'll play a quick game of Tempest. And be honest with you, it plays better. So if I'd never played Tempest before, if I wasn't, in my mid-50s and playing this in the arcade, I would never know the difference between this dial and the arcade spinner. And I probably wouldn't notice the difference that I made with just a small change. So, but it is better. The cost is basically nothing, an hour of my time. And it is better.
Okay, so let's say you're one of those gamers where you say, this plastic dial, my Arcade1UP cabinet sucks. I want a metal, heavy, ball bearing base spinner control on my Arcade1 cabinet. What can I do? One of your options is to pick up the Ultimark Spin Track spinner control. It's about 80 bucks. Now, I've seen a couple videos of gamers who have implemented this into their Arcade1UP cabinets. And it seems kind of dicey because they're messing with the encoder ring. But then I've seen other videos and Reddit threads where they're saying that's not necessary if you go into the MAME options and mess with the sensitivity settings. However, if you're going to mess with those MAME sensitivity settings, that will require you to do the USB hack on the PCB. Another option is one on the horizon in February 2019. Glenn Planamento plans on releasing a spinner control that it's a direct drop in. No mods, no hacks, no nothing. Just put it in your control panel, plug it in, you're ready to go. The control that we fondly call a spinner control is technically called a rotary optical control. And this is important because different games have different kind of controls. And one type of spinner control or rotary optical control is different than another kind of spinner control, which could be a paddle or a rollover control or a trackball. But for this bonus section, I'm going to lump them all together and just call them spinner control games. So we're going to look at these games, these classic spinner control games from the 80s, and this will let us have an insight as to what potentially that Arcade1UP could add in future cabinets. But wait, there's more in this bonus section. Let's talk about Major Havoc and how it was actually released with a rollover control, not a dial and not a spinner, but a rollover control. And you'll see it in conversion cabinets of Tempest with the rollover too. But every now and then you'll see where they did a cabinet conversion and they implemented the spinner control. So I won't say that Arcade1UP didn't give us an authentic arcade feeling with Major Havoc and its spinner control, but it wasn't originally released with the spinner control. It was released with that horizontal rollover control that let the little Major Havoc guy go left and right.
Alright, that wraps up this video on making the 3 modifications to the spinner control on my Arcade1UP cabinet and Asteroids cabinet. Hopefully this video gives you some knowledge and gives you confidence to make the modifications to the spinner control on your Asteroids cabinet, or your Arcade1UP Asteroid Select cabinet, or your 12-in-1 cabinet. Did the modifications I made to my spinner control have an impact on gameplay, on how Tempest plays and how Major Havoc plays? Yes, they did. They did make a difference. They didn't make an earth-shattering difference or a life-changing difference, but they made a difference. It was an improvement. The mod took me about an hour to perform, so it was worth my time. There was no money. It was 40 cents for the pennies. So the price was right and the time was right. And the output, it improved gameplay. So the question will be, will I fork out the 50 bucks for the metal spinner that Glenn Planamento is planning on releasing in sometime February 2019? Probably will. Probably will. I really like Tempest. I really like to play Tempest. I really enjoy Major Havoc. I'd never played Major Havoc before. It's a fun game. And to have that sensitivity to do the breakout games and any other future games that might be out there, I think I'll fork out the 50 bucks to get that real live metal ball bearing spinner. Now, if I didn't have the 50 bucks to upgrade that spinner, would life be okay? Yes, I would still enjoy playing Tempest. I would still enjoy playing Major Havoc on my Asteroids cabinet. So I don't feel like I have to spend the 50 bucks to really enjoy these games, but I know as a kid who lived and spent all his quarters in the arcades in the 80s that the gameplay and the fun factor for me at my age, it'd be worth the 50 bucks. Keep watching my YouTube channel to catch all my future videos on other topics related to these Arcade1UP cabinets. Don't forget to hit the red subscribe button below and ring that bell if you want to get notifications when I add content to my YouTube channel. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you dislike this video, hit the thumbs down. And if you have any feedback, leave it in the comment sections below. All right, go out there and have a great day and play you some classic arcade video games.